most of the time I hear people just saying, I want to be in technology. And I would love to like get the message out there that technology means more than just being a coder. It doesn't mean that you're just being a software engineer, building the AIs, building like the back end. There are so many more roles to play in
Yeah.
technology that you don't have to start with being a software engineer or having a BS in computer science, right? You can be someone who's very passionate about accessibility. And therefore, you are being part of the process in technology to ensure that people have accessibility built into their apps and or the experience is
So hello everyone. So welcome to this new podcast. And today we just have Christina Monti with us. So thank you, Christina. Welcome to this podcast. So can you just explain more about yourself to the audience? And yeah.
But technically, right now, I am product manager for the developer relations, and that is for our external developers that are using PayPal to integrate like solutions for merchants and partners, making sure that their experience is optimized and they have all the tools that they need to get started or even get through some of those challenging friction points in our process.
Great. So yeah, it's been like you are just not a professional coder. You didn't went to college or you haven't learned programming, but you are into this. You're just working in a good company. So how's that journey has been like what's your journey when you just started in like learning something, coming to this or like where you're just working at PayPal? What's the complete journey look like?
I do have the ability to understand what people are talking about when they're saying they're having challenges with coding, with doing this. I can talk and listen, and I would say translate the problem that they're having into a business problem so that we focus on that experience and make sure that we're optimizing what our developers are doing in a way that is helpful for the business, but also technology as well, right? For those that are building on technology stacks. So um, it's interesting because most of the time I get questions around how do I know if this is the right role for me in technology, or most of the time I hear people just saying, I want to be in technology. And I would love to like get the message out there that technology means more than just being a coder. It doesn't mean that you're just being a software engineer, building the AIs, building like the back end. There are so many more roles to play in technology that you don't have to start with being a software engineer or having a BS in computer science, right? You can be someone who's very passionate about accessibility. And therefore, you are being part of the process in technology to ensure that people have accessibility built into their apps and or the experience is optimized for not only the technologist, but the business, right? So there's so many more roles to play that I think anyone can really get into the roles that they're playing in technology. And what I do myself, this is my own journey, but I focus on the things that I do naturally without even putting it on my task list, putting it in the backlog. And that is literally providing like a space for people to provide feedback and listen actively, not necessarily like passively, like, oh yeah, you said this sucked. Well, yeah, it sucked, but why did it suck? Let's talk about why they're saying the things they're saying, not what they're saying, right? So every day I can do that without a task. And that's why I feel like I have that opportunity right now to be successful because I'm doing the thing that is the most passionate for me.
So, and also,
Yeah.
I just want to ask this basic question. This is the general question when it comes to a developer advocate. So, what exactly is developer advocate? Like, how can you just explain to someone who don't know anything about that? So, how can you just explain that? What's developer advocate or let's say developer relations role?
In our space, developer advocacy and developer relations is really focused around the content, the community, and then that supporting of the community. So we really want to make sure that we are acknowledging that the world today is different and how they learn is different. And we are creating content that is supportive of that new way of learning. You know, you think about content, who's going to really look and watch a 20-30 minute video and want to sit there and listen? You know what I mean? Like they want 20 minutes, they want 20 seconds. Teach me something in 20 seconds. That's it, right?
Yeah.
So the world just is different. We don't have the attention and the time to pay attention to that. So, I mean, we're really focused on content right now. In my mind, from a strategic perspective and from my product mindset, that is the baseline, right? That's table stakes to ensure that developers are having a good experience. Community is part of that, right? Hopefully with the amount of content that we're creating and the vibes we're putting out into the community, we start getting our community to grow and people are advocating on our behalf, not necessarily us advocating for the company. It's like, hey, PayPal's showing up, they're doing the right things, they're giving me a video on 2 seconds how to get this done, and I love it, right? I think for me, my biggest goal is to optimize the developer's experience such that they have the opportunity to just get something done in a very short time, right? Because when you look at the world of developers, there's a lot of, I'd say, caveats, especially in the product and payment world, because you have the larger organizations where people have an engineering role and they're just trying to do their job, right? But then there's that bottom where you're a freelancer and you're putting on a website a payment button. You want to get that done as fast as possible so you can move on to the next one, right? Yeah. So to say that I want to create an experience where they have to do that in 2 weeks, I'm only taking away from their bottom line revenue where they can move on to the next solution. So my goal is really to enable them to go quicker and in the right ways.
Okay, now you just mentioned that a developer advocate role, it's more about content and optimizing the developer experience. So what are the roles that we can just expect when it comes to developer, developer relations? Like you just mentioned, developer advocate, one of those. So what are the other roles? So can you just talk about that as well?
Yeah. The thing I love about developer relations in my mind is you have different roles that are custom to what, again, your passion is. So you can be a content creator where you're creating those videos. You don't mind being, on a video and up and everyone's viewing those, right? But some people don't like to do that. And yeah. I think it's absolutely fine. There's community managers, right? You create a community around you. You create like people that want to be in your space and they listen to what you say. So community management is another role that I find is extremely critical in the DevRel space. There's also the back end, right? So when you talk about developer relations, I think there's this aspect of what we can bring in creativity. So being a developer relations advocate or DevRel, whatever you want to call it, because everybody calls it something different, but being in this space is very creative. And when you think of how an engineering person or how the engineering role is structured in a large organization. So in my mind, there's the back end aspect of building examples or building an app, a sample app, or providing them with certain code for their sample code, right? Yeah. You can't ask someone, in my mind, who is creating a video about a new feature that's coming out. Just you're asking someone to be in 2 different mind spaces in 1 or 2 weeks. Like that's not efficient. So I love to organize it such that one person's doing that front end, like engineering, or their videos and creative content. Someone else is in the back end building a sample app or making sure the code is in all languages or doing all the things that a back end engineer can do, right? So I feel like there's different roles to play. And that's okay. So if I could just summarize, it's the content creators, the back end, like sample apps, sample code, all the things that a developer will need to have a great experience. And then those community managers, those that are going out in the community and saying, look, here's a video, here's the sample app, tell us what you think. Was this great? Was it not? Right? So I would say it's like a triangle, right? You have to have all sides of the triangle in order to get a triangle.
Yeah, that's really great. So how can a junior how can a junior developer, or let's say any fresher, can just apply for a devrel role? Is devrel is open for juniors? So that's a common question we just have. So what's your take on that?
I will say in my space, my world, junior developers absolutely have space to join. I think that if I could change the technology world, it's really to change the stigma around needing to be a senior in order to get things. Like I don't know. I just feel like I've been in technology for so long that I see the unspoken, like, not mistreatment, but the feelings that come of the senior junior roles.
Yeah.
A junior doesn't feel like they can say something, and it's not because they can't, it's because at one time in their role, they were felt like they were meant to feel like they were less than. They were meant to feel like they didn't have the same perspective because they didn't spend 20 years in a BS of master. It's just
Yeah.
it's just this weird unspoken thing. And in my mind, I go back to the world is different. How we learn is different. How the world engages is different. And those that are the higher levels need to embrace the lower juniors because they're learning the way the world learns today. They're not learning how the world learned 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
And we need to acknowledge that and provide space for that because, in my mind, you have a 20-year plus veteran who's building the things. And that's great. But it's kind of like our US politics. You have people that are sitting in the Senate, House, whatever, majority. They've been there for 60 years. All of the younger generations don't agree with anything they're doing. Well, why? Because they're like been there for 60 years. They're still operating on those values and the things that happened 60 years ago. So it's the same concept in technology that I think we need to acknowledge and provide space for junior devs, because I could never, in my mind, I couldn't make a TikTok video. There's no way. Like, I am not a TikTok star. But a junior dev is going to be a TikTok star. Why? Because they grew up on TikTok, right? They've been through that and they know what sticks. I don't. I can tell you that it's important, but I can't do the thing because I'm not a TikTok star. I don't have a TikTok channel, like, right? So I'm totally pro juniors because they have different ideas that are creative, that work for today. And I think people should embrace that for sure.
Yeah, that's really important. And also, I've just seen that, like, when it comes to normal software engineer role, or let's say any kind of engineer role, we used to have certain kind of things that we should put in our resume, right? Like, we should mention some of the projects, or let's say the internship or if you have kind of any kind of previous experience, we used to mention everything. So what, like, how the resume should look like when you're just applying for any kind of this kind of developer advocate role, or let's say any kind of role related to this developer relations? So how that should be?
I mean, it is different in the fact that, I've looked at resumes and I've seen, if you have a TikTok channel with 13 million followers, you've got a community, right? That's a fact. So in DevRel, if part of our role is to have a community, you have one, right? So you're capable, you're showing that you have 13 million followers, you're capable of creating a community.
I just want to ask, I'm just curious about to know what's your day-to-day life look like, a developer advocate at PayPal, what you currently do, what kind of things you just do. Like, are you creating content, or let's say managing some backend you just mentioned? So what kind of thing that you're just doing?
My role is going to be completely different from everyone else. I'll start with that. I will say that I'm in product. So when you look at product, I am looking at this from a strategic perspective. I am creating and or helping to shape the vision of what DevRel is for the organization. So a lot of my day-to-day as gross as it sounds, is in meetings. um, it's a lot of strategically thinking of how we're going to win in the overall grand scheme of things for developers. Now, I'm very critical of like, it's for developers. It's not for PayPal. My win is for developers. So I want to make sure at the end of the day, developers are winning. And when they're winning, I'm tying that back to the business goals, right? So if I can enable a developer to get up and running in 15 minutes, that's another merchant, which is obviously hitting the bottom line for the business, right? We're continuing to add value. And so that's my goals, is to ensure that the developer experience is optimized. Now, I create the vision, the roadmap strategy. I have developer advocates that are executing. So Jamin on my team is an amazing content creator. He's creating videos that I have in the backlog of things that we need to do as a baseline. We cannot miss on these ones, right?
Yeah.
So he's creating content and he's just taking from the backlog. We also have folks that are doing DX audits. So we want to make sure that we're checking our documentation and our developer experience in real time from the eyes of the developer. And we are creating what we call these friction logs that we, oh my gosh, his name's beside me, but he's an amazing dev advocate. You know what I'm talking about? He created the whole friction log thing. Oh, the worst dev. I love him. The worst dev. You should get him on your podcast too. He's an amazing resource. But friction logs, putting that back into the business, keeping product owners accountable for the developer experience. So we're saying here, we did this the way you've written your documentation, your technical documentation as is, and here's where they get lost, here's where they get lost, here's where they get lost, fix it, right? We're trying to put that back into the product world to make changes to the documentation and or dev experience. Again, just making sure that gets back to the business. But that is a lot of my day is strategic, making sure we have a backlog, making sure that the dev advocates are working on the things that are the most important at that time. And then, a lot of meetings. That's my day to day.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. I do have a space, like the one thing that I can say is under my belt that I am extremely passionate about. I love to do it. So one of the things we do at PayPal, which I started, was a program called Voice of Developer. And basically I host sessions inside PayPal with developers that have either integrated or are going to integrate. And it's basically a listening session for our product and eng teams to come and listen to the developer's experience. I feel like in my mind, it's different than seeing feedback because you can hear, you can feel, right? The experience that someone had. And in my mind, for product development and even in software development, I feel like it's extremely important to feel the end user's perspective, because otherwise it becomes very machine, right? I'm doing my user story, put it in, take it out, I'm done. But you don't ever feel the end result. So I do these sessions quite often. It's usually once a week. And the developers come in, speak for an hour about their experience. I focus on why they're saying what they're saying, not what they're saying, because it's easier for, I think, engineering teams to focus on why than what, and then they don't get offended. But I mean, these sessions are very fruitful in the fact that it goes all the way up to our CTO. Our CTO can watch them. I have our VPs watch them. I send out summaries. I make sure that if there's any action items that I can control, I'm following up on those to make sure that we focus on making changes to the developer experience. So that's one program that I hold dear to heart. Like I said, I've started this conversation. I'm here to provide a platform for developers and their feedback to get into the organization. So that's the one that I love the most.
That's really great. And also I can just see like you're just being active on some of the spaces, providing value to many other folks as well. Like even I've just been a part of your previous space where you just talk about completely about devrel. So it's been really amazing that you're just sharing your knowledge. It's not about like growing ourselves, it's about the community, and we should make others to grow as well. That's really important point that you just mentioned. And one final thing that you just want to mention before we can like uh, end up this session. So I hope like we just talked about a lot of things like when it comes to devrel, like your experience, what are the different tech, like what are the different fields in devrel. So what's your overall take on this podcast, or let's say anything that you just want to say finally to the audience who are just watching this video?
I think that the final words that I would say is going to address the junior folks that maybe I'd say hesitant that they're enough. I'll just say you are enough, whether you have technology background or not. In my mind, learning and being vulnerable it's hard, but it's very rewarding, right? And so I would say take the shot. I would say write a blog post and keep writing a blog post, or keep sharing in public, or keep attending community sessions. Just keep being out there and you'll find your niche. It's really in what you're doing on your day-to-day. Sumant, you are amazing in the fact that you're creating these videos and it's not even part of your job, right? You're doing this just naturally. You want to talk to people, you want to do things in public. And this is your vibe, right? This is where you're finding this passion. So just keep doing it. You're making a difference. And I will say to anyone that's a junior that doesn't think that they're making a difference, you're making a difference, whether you see it or not. You are making a difference. Someone sees your post, someone sees your video, someone hears your voice. You are making a difference.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for mentioning that, Christina. And yeah, it's been a really amazing discussion with you. Like we have just touched a lot of things when it comes to devrel. So I hope this session adds value to folks who are just watching this video. So yeah, thank you for that point also, Christina. It's been really amazing talking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. The pleasure is mine. I'm just glad to have the opportunity to even share what I know. And I hope people find it valuable. I mean, I live in my own head, so I find it valuable.